And today, Vladimir Putin finally spoke out about the shootdown of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17.
These guys are armed, they're drunk, and they're out of control.
Confiscation of items from the crash site by Russian separatists.
What exactly are they trying to hide?
International outrage is growing.
It is an absolutely shambolic situation.
Putin, you have to man up.
Putin today finally called for international access to the crash site.
That is the least that they can do.
Your crime scene is in a war zone that's controlled by your suspects.
Literally drunken separatist soldiers.
Putin propping these thugs up.
Cover up on the ground.
We know what happened here.
Turning now to the Middle East.
The war between Israel and Hamas militants is escalating.
One of the deadliest days in Gaza.
We don't want to see any more civilians getting killed.
Gaza is under siege.
Secretary of State John Kerry is headed to Egypt.
Try to resuscitate diplomatic efforts to end the fighting.
It now has to be our focus to bring about a ceasefire.
This is a very hard time. Gaza, Russia, the Ukraine.
The game in Ukraine hasn't changed.
The Russian government has the capacity to end this crisis.
Russia needs to step up and make a difference here.
The self-proclaimed prime minister of the region controlled by pro-Russian fighters finally handed over black boxes from Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 to Malaysian officials tonight. Also, there was a protest tonight in the Netherlands, the home country of most of the victims. Much of their anger is being directed at Russia and the pro-Russian separatists who most of the world blames for shooting down the plane and now hampering the investigation and recovery. A father who lost his 17-year-old daughter told NBC he blames Vladimir Putin.
And my child lies there in the field, and no one can reach her. Can I have my small piece of Elzemiek, a sock or a t-shirt or a ring? Thank you very much, Mr. Putin, leaders of the separatists or the Ukraine government, for murdering my loved and only child. She has been shot out of the sky.
It's been 5 days since a missile blew Malaysia Flight 17 out of the sky, and almost 200 of the 298 victims have been recovered, even as fighting continues near the debris field. Tonight, a train loaded with bodies in refrigerated carriages departed en route to the Netherlands, where the plane took off last Thursday. Finding more bodies may be difficult, as NBC's Keir Simmons discovered when he toured the area.
There is little dignity for the dead here. Most of the victims have been removed, but their possessions are still not collected. We find a wallet, empty, in the fields where the wreckage fell. The debris covers a huge area. Parts of the plane are scattered over several miles.
This was the cockpit. Look at it.
The front wheel embedded. And when we reach the heart of the crash scene, you can see why officials fear many passengers may never be found.
The UN Security Council voted unanimously today for all countries to cooperate with the investigation of the downing of the plane. As a member of that Security Council, Russia also voted in favor, but that's not enough for President Obama.
Given its direct influence over the separatists, Russia, and President Putin in particular, has direct responsibility to compel them to cooperate with the investigation. That is the least that they can do. The Russian-backed separatists who control the area continue to block the investigation. They've repeatedly prevented international investigators from gaining full access to the wreckage. As investigators approached, they fired their weapons into the air. These separatists are removing evidence from the crash site, all of which begs the question, what exactly are they trying to hide?
Vladimir Putin finally spoke about the crash today and said what he should have said the day it happened.
Чтобы на месте катастрофы работала полноценная группа экспертов под эгидой ИКАО, соответствующей международной комиссии. Нужно сделать все для обеспечения ее полной, абсолютной безопасности. Обеспечить необходимые для ее работы гуманитарные коридоры.
Joining me on the phone from Ukraine is Simon Ostrovsky of Vice magazine. Also joining us, Michael Weiss, foreign policy editor for the Interpreter magazine. Simon, what are the conditions now in the search area, the debris field?
I I actually don't know that. I'm not at the search field. I understand that they've taken some debris away from the field. I think a lot of the bodies have been picked up, as you mentioned in the introduction, and some of them have been put onto a refrigeration train, and they've been driven away, we believe, in the direction of Kharkiv, which is a major Ukrainian city, which is under Ukrainian control, where they're going to be looked at by forensics experts so that they can start trying to identify the bodies. But I think the situation out there has changed over the last couple of days in that observers and investigators have been allowed to look at the field now. For the first couple of days, you had the pro-Russia separatist forces saying that it was too dangerous for members of the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe to go out onto the field, and therefore their security details weren't allowing them full access. But, you know, although you can hear the conflict going off from that area, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's too dangerous for people to actually inspect the field. And so that's a lot of people started asking themselves why the separatist leaders were earlier on insisting that the international observers didn't have full access, raised a lot of questions and a lot of eyebrows, and I think that's why you had the American president finally come out and say what he said today.
It was quite striking to hear the Secretary of State referring to these guys as operating in a kind of drunken stupor. Simon, what would you add to a characterization of these separatists who've been in control of that area?
Well, I mean, I'd say that they're separatists, and I'd say that they are pro-Russian, but, you know, I wouldn't generalize each and every one of those individuals as drunken or in any other state. They support joining Russia and separating from Ukraine. I mean, what else can you say about that?
Michael Weiss, Vladimir Putin finally today said something that he clearly, easily could have said in the first hour of this, saying that it's essential that a full team of experts investigate this crash. What else? What do you make of what else Vladimir Putin had to say today?
Well, yeah, I mean, it took him 5 days after the crash site has been hopelessly contaminated, after the belongings of the victims have been stolen, after the black box went missing for 5 days until it was now reportedly handed over to the Malaysians, for him to come out with a statement like this. Look, this is similar to what Russia and the Syrian regime have always said about atrocities committed in Syria. We need an independent investigation, but not just yet, because we have to protect the safety of those coming in to inspect, you know, the scene of some carnage. Look, the Russian government today came out with other statements which deserve a lot of media scrutiny and attention, including that not only was Ukraine responsible for shooting down this plane, but the United States was responsible for shooting down this plane. The Kremlin's line currently is, and again, it took 5 days for them to come up with this one, a Sukhoi 25 Ukrainian fighter jet. That's a ground assault fighter jet, by the way, was tracking the commercial airliner and then shot it out of the sky. Well, there's a problem with that. The commercial airliner was shot out of the sky at an altitude of 33,000 feet. The Sukhoi 25 has a maximum altitude of 23,000 feet. So the Russians couldn't even Wikipedia their way into useful propaganda in this scenario. I consulted aviation experts today. I put this case to one of them, and he replied with a word that I cannot repeat on primetime television. So they're getting very creative and imaginative. And they're also throwing a lot of sort of, you know, chum and you know, evidence or pseudo-evidence to misdirect people, talking about the Buk anti-aircraft systems. In addition to saying a plane shot this plane out of the sky, they're also propounding this theory that actually it was a Buk anti-aircraft system, but one that had been confiscated from the Ukrainians, not one that Russia had provided. So far, we've seen no evidence to suggest that that is in any way, shape, or form legitimate.
And Vladimir Putin also said today that Russia will do everything we can so that the conflict in Ukraine moves to some sort of peaceful settlement. We'll see what he actually does do in that regard. But he also said something about blame, and let's listen to that. He seems to be saying that all parties are to blame here. Let's listen to that.
Мы неоднократно призывали все противоборствующие стороны немедленно прекратить кровопролитие и сесть за стол переговоров. С уверенностью можно сказать, что если бы 28 июня боевые действия на востоке Украины не были бы возобновлены, то и этой трагедии наверняка бы не произошло.
Michael, your reaction to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, would there be a separatist movement? Would these guys have heavy material and anti-aircraft missiles without Vladimir Putin? The answer is no. So if he wants a peaceful solution, he has a very simple decision to take, which is pull out his men. I've said before on the air, these aren't just pro-Russian separatists. Many of them, in fact, are Russian nationals, including the so-called commander-in-chief of the separatist militia, Colonel Igor Strelkov, who is a Russian military intelligence officer. So pull out your guys from East Ukraine, take away their toys, which you've given them, shut down the border, which you control, and not just you control, but your FSB, your Russian security services control. I mean, it's not very easy to drive a Buk anti-aircraft missile system across that border without being seen or detected. It's like driving a tank from the United States to Mexico. And then the crisis will be resolved. There was a ceasefire agreed to a few weeks ago. The separatists broke it. Another ceasefire will probably happen imminently. I have no doubt that the separatists will keep carrying on. And, you know, look, Europe has to really make an important decision here about what they want to do. This happened on European territory. Most of the victims are Europeans. You saw the protests on your show in the Netherlands of people protesting, blaming personally Vladimir Putin. So the question about dependency on Russian money, Russian gas, Nina Khrushcheva said on MSNBC earlier today, it's a great line, and I think more people should take it up. You know, the old refrain in the Cold War was better dead than red. Well, the new refrain is better cold than dead. And that's the decision that Europe has to make.
Michael Weiss and Simon Ostrowski, thank you both very much for joining me tonight. Coming up, in New York City, what is the penalty for selling cigarettes illegally? Last week, the penalty was death. And in the rewrite, the secret Republican tax increase is not so secret anymore. Some of you actually paid that tax today.